I spent about 30 seconds on YouTube searching for how to brew an IPA. I found thousands of videos showing me recipes and methods for brewing an awesome hop bomb of an IPA, from well-known and trusted pages to little-known pages with just a handful of views. But what about searching how to judge an IPA? I spent about 30 minutes searching deep into YouTube for videos on how to properly judge an American IPA. The results? Not so fruitful. So let's change that. Let's get judgy about American IPA. For this sensory evaluation, I've chosen Lagunitas IPA. It's one of the commercial examples listed in the BJCP style guidelines for American IPA and should be a perfect example for us. So what does the BJCP consider an American IPA? Well, under subcategory 21A, American IPA, in the style guidelines, the overall impression is a decidedly hoppy and bitter, moderately strong pale American ale. The balance is hop forward with a clean fermentation profile, dryish finish, and clean supporting malt, allowing a creative range of hop character to shine through. Pretty straightforward, right? Lots of hops, a little malt supporting those hop flavors and aromas, no funky fermentation esters or phenolics, and pretty drinkable. Here are the vital statistics on an American IPA. Before we evaluate this beer, we need to know what to expect from it. For example, if someone asks you to taste their chocolate cake,
chocolate cake!
You're going to rely on all those chocolate cakes you've eaten over the course of your life. If you've never had chocolate cake, have a long discussion about this with your parents.
Excuse me, why am I like this?
Seriously though, if it's something you've never tasted before, you have no idea if this cake is good, bad, middle of the road, or not even chocolate cake. You need some guidelines to help you make that decision. So let's take a look at the BJCP style guidelines and see what we should be on the lookout for. For aroma, the BJCP says we should have a prominent to intense hop aroma, often featuring American or New World hop characteristics, such as citrus, floral, pine, resin, spice, tropical fruit, stone fruit, berry, or melon. Low to medium-low clean grainy maltiness supports the hop presentation. Generally clean fermentation profile, but light fruitiness is acceptable. Restrained alcohol is optional. In more plain English, we want a crap ton of hop notes that can run the entire range from fruit to pine, a slight malt character to support it, and nothing else really getting in the way of all that hop goodness. We can allow for some fruity esters from yeast, but it's not really the star of the show, and if we get a slight boozy note, well, that's okay too. Appearance is listed as color ranging from medium gold to light reddish amber, clear but light haze allowable, medium-sized white to off-white head with good persistence. Enough said there.
Enough said.
For flavor, we're going to expect that to follow the aroma. Medium to very high hop flavor, same descriptors as aroma. Low to medium-low clean and grainy maltiness, possibly with light caramel and toast flavors. Medium-high to very high bitterness. Dry to medium-dry finish. Hoppy, bitter aftertaste with supportive malt. Low esters are optional. Background clean alcohol flavor optional. You know, it's got to taste IPA-ish.
This beer is actually really good. What is it, an IPA?
Mouthfeel is described as medium light to medium body with a smooth texture. Medium to medium high carbonation, no harshness, very light, smooth warmth is optional. So not too heavy on the body, decent carbonation, and very drinkable.
Here, Morty, this will make your urine drinkable.
The guidelines have some other cool information like the characteristic ingredients, history of the style, and some entry judging comments. A couple of things to note are, anything stronger than 7.5 ABV is considered a double IPA and should be entered in 21B specialty IPA, as well as some of those offshoots of IPA like black IPA, red IPA, brown IPA, etc. Oak and wood are not appropriate in this category. Yeah, they had to say that. When's the last time you had a really good barrel-aged IPA? Me either.
Wood, Jerry. Wood.
American IPA is basically a highly hopped American pale ale. It is different from its English cousin in the higher amount of hops, the use of American and New World hops, and there's less caramel malt. All right, now we know what we should be looking for and what shouldn't be there. Really? Wood? No! Let's taste some beer. Oh, yeah! Before we get much further, maybe grab a BJCP score sheet, a bottle of Lagunitas IPA, and follow along. I'll wait. You ready? Let's do this. Now, in a competition, this bottle would not have a label like this. It would have a simple label with an entry number, style category, and style name. Let's inspect this like it were a homebrew example, though, just to get the feel for it. Look at the fill level. There should be about an inch of headspace in the neck of the bottle. If it's higher or lower than that, note it. If it's just right, note that too. Next, look at the cap. Does it look like it's on and sealed properly? Is it clean or is it all rusty and dusty? Note those things as well as the color of the cap. I like to note the color of the cap so that the entrant knows that this is indeed their beer that I'm judging. Last, pop that sucker open and listen for the hiss. These are our real first impressions of the sample. If it's supposed to be a clear beer and you can't see through the bottle, or you get a little or no hiss when opening, that could mean there are some issues to be on the lookout for. Now let's pour about 3 ounces into our sample glass. I like to pour straight down the middle to give the head as much chance as possible to show itself off. With a small sample like this, you don't give the pour a whole lot of time to do its thing, so you gotta help it out a little bit. After pouring, I immediately cover my sample glass with a silicone topper I got off Amazon. I'll link that in the description if you want to snag a few. They're super handy, super cheap, and allow you to trap all those good smells for when you're ready to give it a sniff. Speaking of, you want to give that sample a good sniff as soon as possible after pouring. There are some aromas that quickly fade away, so you got to get your nose in there and get a good whiff before they split the scene. This is why I use the silicone covers. I can get the sample poured, recap the bottle, get my pencil, and get ready to work and not lose any of those initial aromas. There are a few different methods of smelling a sample to get all the different nuances from the aroma. One is what we do naturally, that long, deep sniff to bring in all the different aspects at once and get a good overall sense of what's going on. Make sure to get your nose right inside the glass for this. Be careful, though, not to get in too far, or you'll get a nose full of foam or beer. Don't ask me how I know about this. Another method is called the shotgun method. Get your nose in the glass again, and take deep, short breaths in. I usually go for 2 or 3. I use this when I'm playing a game of Guess That Smell with myself. It helps concentrate the aroma and gives me a little better idea of what's going on in there. Lastly, there's the drive-by method. Keep the glass about 6 to 8 inches from your nose and pass it by your nose at a somewhat slow pace. This helps to pick up on those more subtle notes that you may be missing when you've got your nose fully in the sample glass. Remember, we are looking for malt aroma, fermentation characters, and yeast esters, as well as all those hop notes. This can be a bit difficult when one element is the superstar of the show, like an IPA. The hops are everywhere and way up front, so you need to dig past that to see if you can pick up on any of the malt backbone in the aroma. The style guidelines say they can be low to medium low, so it may be hard to pick them out. As for the esters, they can be fruity, which is a lot of what the hops are contributing, so that can be a hard thing to sense as well. Watch out for anything that smells out of place too, like butterscotch or corn or just anything, well, off.
That's weird. That's weird.
Alright, let's see what we got here. Hops are medium-low with some pine and a dank marijuana-like character. There's a low citrus note of orange and grapefruit, but it's definitely lower than that pine weed smell. Way back in the background is a slight white bread crust sort of aroma, and it had a skunky smell to it as well. Now, let's take a look at this beauty. As you'd expect from a commercial example, this thing is brilliantly clear. You could read a newspaper through this thing. Nice, tight white head that lasted pretty good, and it's a golden color. Now comes the best part in my opinion, tasting this sample.
Let's get some more beer. Yeah!
As with aroma, the hops are supposed to be way out in front, with a bit of malty backbone to help balance out the bitterness, so you'll have to take a few sips to get everything we need for this section. Notice I said sips, not drinks. We're not at the tap room with our buddies. We're judging now, and that's a whole different ballgame. What are the first things that come to mind? More than likely with this style, it's a big mouthful of hoppy goodness. Write those down. I got medium-high hops that pretty much followed Aroma. Pine trees and weed with a medium-low orange grapefruit sort of thing. Now take another sip and try to dig past the hops and look for that malt character. Can you taste it? Way back there in the background? It was really hard to detect any malt, but if I really thought about it and pushed past all that hoppiness, I could just get a little of that white bread and a little cracker flavor as well. Now take another sip to look at the fermentation character. It should be fairly clean, which means no signs of low attenuation, which would taste like it's overly sweet or sticky, or maybe oxidation, which can taste like cardboard, paper, and sometimes also an overly sweet taste. Again, there could be some fruity esters, but I find those hard to separate from the fruity hop notes. I found no real fermentation character flaws in this one, just nice and clean IPA. And let's talk balance. I think this is the key to any good beer, balancing all those characteristics into a perfect harmonious blend. Being a former musician, I tend to think of this in terms of using a mixing board for mixing sound for a band. You want to hear everything, but nothing should be so far out or so far in the back that it throws the whole mix off. For this sample, I think it's balanced as it should be, in favor of that firm hop bitterness with a slight malt backbone supporting it. Lastly, let's talk about aftertaste and finish. Is anything lingering longer than others? And does it sit for a long time? Or does it kind of hang out there for a second or two after swallowing and then poof, it's gone, getting you ready for another taste? For me, that bitterness lasted for a while into the aftertaste, and that skunky thing was in there too. Not a lot, but noticeable as the beer warmed up. It finished dry, not sweet or cloying, just like an IPA should. Okay, how does this beer feel as it flows through your mouth? Does it have a thin body like a light beer? Or is it real thick and big like a big imperial stout? An American IPA should have a medium body, so it should sit nicely in between those two. This sample had a medium body, not too thin and not thick and chewy either. Carbonation is another thing to notice. The bubbles can help bring the aromatics up to your nose for aroma and also scrub your tongue and wash away the taste, setting you up for another sip. Not enough carbonation and it can feel really lifeless and bland. Remember sneaking those sips of your dad's beer when you were a kid and they were usually pretty flat or completely flat? Oh, you didn't do that? You were a good kid? Yeah, me too. I just heard about that from other kids that did stuff like that. Anyway, my sample has medium-high carbonation, which is what I like to see in an IPA like this. An American IPA can have a small amount of alcohol warmth to it. When I hear that, I allow for a slight tongue-numbing sensation. Anything more than that, like a warm or hot sensation running down my esophagus when I swallow it, is definitely a fault. We're drinking beer here, not bourbon. Now for Lagunitas, there really wasn't a strong alcohol presence I could detect. As far as creaminess and astringency, you shouldn't get either of these when sampling an IPA. Creaminess would indicate to me that it may not have fermented outright, or there was some kind of adjuncts added to the grain bill that maybe shouldn't have been there. If you do get any astringency, it would more than likely come from the bittering addition of the hops or maybe from dry hopping. If you get anything like a tightness in the hinge of your jaw, that's astringency. Everyone keeps equating this to sucking on a tea bag, and I just want to know who the hell is sucking on tea bags, because that's absolutely disgusting.
That's gross. What'd it taste like?
Anywho, none of those in this sample. Now we take all those things we wrote down, check them against the style guidelines, and give our impression of this sample. So for me, the things I think went right are the hop bitterness and character. It was just a great example of an old school West Coast IPA as far as that went. It was easy drinking and pretty enjoyable. For the things that didn't quite hit style, it was that skunkiness and the lower hop character for me. I got plenty of bitterness, but the aroma and flavor were lacking a bit. I think I may have gotten an old bottle of this IPA. To fix those things, first, I'd like to get a fresh sample of this and see how things change. Age can do a real number on an IPA. The skunkiness isn't really the brewer's fault in this case. More than likely the store I bought it from has some storage issues. I always like to end this section on a fun and positive note. My two go-tos are, thanks for sharing, and if I really like the beer, even if it was out of style, I'll say, I would order another of these if I got this at any tap room. Before we score this beer, if you got any value out of this video, why not give the like button a little boop? It helps YouTube get it out to others that might like it, and it would mean a lot to me too. Thanks for doing that. Okay, time to give this beer its score. If you watched my video on how homebrew comps work, you know there are a couple of different ways to score. Top down and bottom up, plus a really cool hybrid way I've been using for a while now that I feel really works to help nail your scoring on the first try. First, I think about the beer I just sampled. I circle the category the sample falls into on the scoring guide at the bottom left. For this beer, I think it's an excellent example of the style, just a few flaws that knocked it down. Now from that, I can figure out how to score each of the individual sections, including overall impression, and work in that score range. So in this case, Aroma will get 9, Appearance 3, Flavor 17, Mouthfeel 5, and overall impression gets an 8. Add those all up, and your grand total is 42, right in the middle of the excellent range, which I'm comfortable with. What score did you get? Leave me a comment and tell me your score for Lagunitas IPA as an example of an American IPA.